I just would like to firstly, before I move to the sort of the closing remarks, which I think we're sort of ready for, I want to reiterate my thanks first to the organisation team, Holly, who took on the great burden of the of making sure that the science was right while I went on an extraordinary road trip to Edinburgh with a car with 70 miles range. So thank you very much for dealing with that. Of course, Andrea and Lucy, thank you so much for all of the for all of the arrangements and the technical things. I apologise to any shortcomings that anybody has experienced, but I think from our end, certainly here, and do please give us some feedback. But I think this is the first time we've tried such an event, and it seems to be enormously successful. Certainly everybody in the room here has a great time, and it's worked really, really well. So, but do give us some feedback on things that we might be able to do better. Obviously, we're learning how to do the technology. Thanks also to all of the speakers for giving us, I think, such wonderful time talks and either pre-recorded or live and so on. And thank you all. I think that's been a wonderful day. I think it's also interesting how, by having the discipline of having short talks and joint sessions, seems to work really quite well. So this is one of the sort of learning experiences I think we can take from the experience of the pandemic, and as we hopefully move away from that, move on to doing other final things. So that's great, and thank you all very much for that. So I just finally, before closing, I just want to I want to end with this slide, which is one some of you may remember, because I used this slide when the MRF talk, when I talked about the Global Genome Library. And this is Duke Humphreys Library. And actually, since then, I've realized there's a few more connections with Duke Humphreys Library. I mean, first of all, it's about 150 meters away from where we are. And Duke Humphreys Library is the oldest university library in Oxford. And I think there's one or two sort of interesting parallels for a bit of fun at the end here. One of the parallels is very unexpected. But a number of you know that a couple of years ago I was senior proctor, and I was senior proctor from Hertford College. So I'm the latest senior proctor of Hertford College. The very first senior proctor from Hertford College was a man called Gilbert Keimer, who you may not have heard of, but he's very interesting because he was the physician to Henry V. He went on campaign with Henry V in 1415. He was senior proctor in 1412 to 13. He founded one of the first colleges of medicine in London. It was very important that. But key for this, he was also the physician to Duke Humphrey, Duke of Gloucester, who was Henry V's younger brother, known as the Uncle of Kings. Now, the important point is, it was him that he persuaded Duke Humphrey to give his enormous library of 280 books to the University of Oxford. I'll tell you how enormous that library was, because at that time, the University of Oxford had only 20 books. So I think you can sort of see the comparison with the MRF Genome Library. You start off very small, and of course they were all handwritten. And then the university built this Duke Humphreys Library, the building we can see here, to house those books. Now, why am I talking about Genome Library? Well, one thing is, of course, this library has now been there since about the 1450s when it was built. And so one lesson about libraries is that they have longevity. But another actually interesting lesson about this library is there's only 2 books of Duke Humphreys are left. All the others have been burnt because they were not correct, because they were obviously all Catholic tracts. So in the Reformation, most of them were burnt. But the library is still there, but it has different context. And in that sense, the Genome Library has data in it, but those data will be made better. They'll be made better and improved with curation. So it's important that we have libraries that last for a long time, but the structure of the library is as important, is what I'm saying, as the things that's in it. And then that came out when Vinny was talking about the work that Keith's been doing. It's all very well having data, but the data will improve, it will get better. The PubMST still contains MLST data. Hopefully nobody's going to burn it, but it is superseded, and we're talking about having methalones and packed bars. So things will change. So the library has to be able to adapt, as indeed this does. Now, the final thing I want to say about the library from the point of view of the genome libraries is that you will notice in the front here there are desks and chambers, and those of you who are Harry Potter fans may realize that this is actually Harry Potter's Hogwarts library. And all the people who come to Oxford to see the library come not because it's Duke Humphrey's library, they come to see it because it's where Harry Potter was filmed. But the crucial point about that is the library is not just a repository of information, it's also a place to work. And it has in it the infrastructure to work. In this case, it's tables and desks. And quite recently, I had a talk when I was senior proctor because they've just recently put new lighting in. Because, of course, you can imagine it's very dark. So that new lighting has made this is still a place of work that people go into. And anybody with a library card in Oxford can go and sit in there and work. So my ambition for the library, the MRF Genome Library and its successor, Global Genome Library, is that it will last for a very long time, that it will provide an infrastructure that is robust and useful. You know, who knows, 500 years? I don't know, maybe not 500, but we've made at least the first 10 years. And my aspiration is that this will have longevity. But of course, it's only lasted because there's been people who have cared for the books and looked after them and curated it. None of this is cost-free. And it doesn't go away. You can't sort of build. If Duke Humphrey had given his money when he died, and Gilbert Keimer apparently went off in a horse and cart and bought those 280 books back, can you imagine? In a 1400s cart from London. But somebody had to do that. But it wasn't finished when they built the building and put the books in it. And that's also true with the genome libraries. It's not finished just because you've built a database structure and you filled it with data. Those data have to be constantly curated, they have to be tended, they have to be looked after, and they have to be updated. And although our infrastructure may not last 500 years, hopefully, as I say, it'll last a long time. So with that, I'd just like to I'd like finally to ask us all just to end in a moment when I've finished with a round of applause to everybody, both here and virtually, for joining in. And just to say, we will be putting this on the PubMST YouTube channel, so all the talks and everything will be available for future reference for anybody who wants to get there. So as long as YouTube is there, at least this meeting will continue to exist. And then, as I say, finally, let's just give a final round of applause to close for all the participants of the meeting and making this such a thank you meeting. Thank you all very much indeed.